Spur of the Moment was the final curtain call for two Twilight Zone legends. Its story successfully misdirects the audience, but there were a few things about the visuals that undercut its effectiveness. Did the strong creative forces behind it make this Season 5 installment must-see? 18-year-old Anne Henderson is the daughter of a wealthy father and betrothed to an investment banker named Robert Blake. Out on horseback on the afternoon of her engagement party, Anne sees a dark figure atop a black steed. It screams her name and chases the girl back to her house. Visibly shaken, Anne is comforted by her parents and fiancé, but soon her ex-fiancé and childhood friend David Mitchell arrives. He demands to see Anne and tries to convince her to leave Robert. Anne is caught in the middle of what she thinks is true love and the expectations of her family. The Dark Rider from earlier is then shown living out their own life as we discover her surprising identity. After 16 episodes written or based on his work, one of the show's creative mainstays, Richard Matheson, turned in a teleplay that ended up being his final Twilight Zone installment of the original run to air. Outside the series, Matheson is likely the most well-known writer of the bunch with too many credits to name. His time in the Fifth Dimension spanned every season and yielded some of the most memorable work of his career, including A World of Difference, Nick of Time, The Invaders, Little Girl Lost, and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Matheson's stories were used in other TZ projects, and he was directly involved in a few, but never on the level of the first series. Directing Spur of the Moment was a personal favorite, Elliot Silverstein. This was also his finale, totaling 4 installments inside 3 seasons. The high of the obsolete man was never approached again, but the passers-by and especially the trade-ins showcased Silverstein's dedication to quality through striking visuals and emotional characters. Unfortunately, I think Spur of the Moment is pretty clearly on the bottom of his list, but that doesn't mean it's bad. His technique is interesting, yet it gives away an element too early that even Matheson complained about. We'll get into all that in the spoiler section. The cast is competent, with Diana Hyland excelling in the lead. She runs through many different emotions in a short period of time, and even when she's not talking, we can read the conflict on her face. I thought she handled the material very well. A fiery performance from Roger Davis as Anne's ex David also stood out. Their scenes together and the tension he brings raised the stakes on an emotional and physical level. There's a raw passion between the two that boils over in David's confrontation with her family.
Anne, please.
Hold steady, Mr. Mitchell.
Is this what you want? Your father to break us up at the point of a gun?
The dark figure who chased Anne is actually Anne herself 25 years into the future. She's 43 years old and absolutely miserable, treating her mother terribly and constantly cursing the memory of her dead father. She says everything in her life went wrong the day she married the wrong man. Anne admits she's been seeing visions of her younger self and has failed to chase her down every time. She remembers the incident from the day of her engagement party and realizes what the dark figure was trying to warn her about. David then stumbles his way into the living room and mocks his wife's plight. In a flashback to the engagement party, we see Anne run off with David, leaving Robert and the wishes of her family behind. In the present, the older Anne rushes outside to ride her black horse and again comes across her 18-year-old self. She chases her, but can't catch up. Henderson is doomed to repeat the cycle, living with the eternal pursuit to correct her past mistake. Spur of the Moment has a concept that should be more interesting than how it plays out, but I don't think its faults were really on Richard Matheson's writing. He defended himself with a quote in Mark Zickry's Twilight Zone companion book. I felt the director gave the whole thing away in the beginning. You could see it was the same girl and you weren't supposed to know that until the end. I agree with most of Matheson's assessment there. It does feel like the dark figure's identity should have been kept a mystery until the last couple minutes, but the approach and scene order would have had to have been completely different. Silverstein could have stylistically hidden the figure's face until we got our flash forward about halfway through. While Diana Hyland is fantastic as the same character about a quarter century later, an older actress may have kept the secret. I don't know how they would have gotten around the scene with Anne's mom, since the dialogue spells out what's going on and David later enters, but the puzzle could have been preserved for a while longer instead of giving it away in the teaser. I know what they're going for there, but how would Anne expect to not scare her younger self when she poses with a cape and screams like a Disney villain? Watching that scene from 43-year-old Anne's altered perspective could have fixed this, but they just reused the same angle and nothing is gained in the final moments. The fourth and final original TZ score by René Garajuank didn't help out the production as much as you'd think. The music is bombastic and leads to a feeling of over-exaggeration during some of the sequences. It also cuts out at strange moments. Stopping this blustering soundtrack here before restarting it again doesn't build any tension. Older Anne has the appearance of an evil sorceress or something, so why not continue with the villain music? I do like Matheson's spin on who Anne's husband ends up being. She marries for pure wild passion instead of her father's safe choice in Robert. Most movies and TV shows like to build the idea of following your heart, but we all know the heart isn't always right. This was more of a cautionary tale to check your instincts before committing. I thought that was a smart twist. Spur of the Moment is far from the worst, but it fails to reach the heights of where this creative team could have taken it. I do consider it the least of Elliot Silverstein's episodes and on the lower end of Richard Matheson's stories. It's on the edge of a recommendation, however, in all honesty, I have no enthusiasm to do so. If my description here hasn't deterred you, check it out. This isn't one to stay away from at all costs. Unless you've also experienced an evil older version of yourself on a horse chasing you down. Maybe give them a listen next time. I'm sure their maniacal screaming can only mean good things. Things you can only find in the Twilight Zone.